The kindest people are often dying inside, and no one knows, including themselves. There's something nobody talks about when they celebrate empaths and call sensitivity a gift. They don't mention the moment when you stop feeling altogether, when the light everyone relied on just goes out, and you're still showing up for everyone, but inside there's nothing. Just silence. Just the terrifying absence of the very thing that made you you. Have you been there when someone's crying and you know you should feel something, but there's just nothing? When you see another person in crisis reaching out, and instead of that familiar pull to help you feel dread, maybe you've lain awake wondering what's wrong with you. Everyone else navigates the world without absorbing every drop of pain. And here you are, the one who was so sensitive, feeling absolutely nothing at all. The guilt is crushing. You remember when you could feel, when other people's joy lit you up, when being there for someone felt natural. Now you're tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Tired in your soul. Tired of being the strong one everyone can count on, and you can't tell anyone. They'd say to set boundaries, practice self-care, take a bubble bath. As if this could be fixed with a weekend off. But here's what I want you to know. What you're experiencing isn't a character flaw. It's not weakness. What you're going through has a name, a purpose, and a profound path forward. Before we dive deeper, if this resonates with your soul's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more transformational content. Your support helps this message reach other souls who need to hear it. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who mapped the human psyche, understood this collapse intimately. He called it nigredo, the blackening, the necessary darkness before transformation. He knew certain souls must periodically descend into this void, not because they're broken, but because they're being remade. This isn't about self-care tips or managing sensitivity better. This is about the death and rebirth of your entire psychological structure. This is about what happens when an empath stops trying to survive and starts allowing transformation. Over the next 50 minutes, we're going to explore why you collapsed, what's actually happening in your psyche, and how this darkness isn't your ending, it's your beginning. We'll walk through the 5 stages of empathic transformation Jung observed in his work with patients and within his own journey. The person you're becoming is more powerful, more whole, and more genuinely yourself than you've ever been. Your breakdown is a breakthrough. Your emptiness is making room for something unprecedented. But to get there, we have to understand what collapse really is and why it chose you. Let's dismantle a lie you've been told your entire life. The world loves celebrating empaths. Articles call you an intuitive healer, a light worker. Then when you crash from carrying everyone's weight, those same voices say, you just need better boundaries. Don't take things personally. Toughen up. See the contradiction. They celebrate your openness, then blame you when it costs you everything. Here's the truth. You're not a normal person bad at boundaries. You're experiencing a completely different developmental path that most psychology fails to understand. Carl Jung spent his life studying this path. He watched patients descend into what looked like breakdown, only to emerge transformed. He experienced it himself during his confrontation with the unconscious, when his sense of self shattered and everything dissolved. He discovered something revolutionary. This dissolution isn't pathology. It's metamorphosis. Jung called this nigredo, the first stage of psychological alchemy. Ancient alchemists knew you couldn't transform lead into gold by polishing it. You had to burn it down to essence first. The same is true for the soul. When an empath collapses, what's happening is the burning away of false identity. Those roles you've been playing, the helper, the good one, the strong one, they're not who you are. They're masks. Jung called them the persona, the social face we show the world. For most people, the persona is just a tool. But for empaths, it becomes a prison. You've spent so long being what others need that you've forgotten there's a self beneath all that giving. You've confused your value with your usefulness, And now that structure is collapsing. Not because you failed, but because your psyche knows it has become a cage. When did you last do something purely because you wanted to? When did you last feel a feeling that was just yours, not absorbed from someone else? When did you last know what you actually wanted? These questions probably feel impossible. That's how complete the persona takeover has been. But here's Jung's radical insight. This collapse, this void you're experiencing, isn't emptiness. It's space. Space for the real you, what Jung called the self, to finally emerge. Jung made a crucial distinction. The ego is the small self, the I you think you are. The self with a capital S is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, everything expressed and repressed. Most people never meet their self. They live identified with their ego, never knowing there's something vaster beneath. But empaths, you're being forced into this meeting. Your collapse is an invitation from your own depths. Jung understood what modern quick-fix culture doesn't. You can't heal by returning to what you were. The structure that collapsed was meant to collapse. Going back would be like a butterfly trying to become a caterpillar again. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Not around the darkness, but through it. Not fighting to rebuild the old self, but allowing something new to be born." Here's what's really happening. Your unconscious, the wise part of your psyche operating beneath awareness, has initiated a protective shutdown. It's pulling your energy inward because you have nothing left to give. This isn't depression. This is your soul saying, "Enough." We're regenerating. Every symptom has meaning. The numbness, protection from overstimulation. The disconnection, space to discover who you are without others' projections. The lack of motivation, energy redirecting from outward performance to inward transformation. Your psyche is brilliant. It knows exactly what it's doing. Your ego, trained to always be productive, always giving, always on, is terrified. It interprets rest as failure. It reads withdrawal as weakness. It mistakes transformation for collapse. But transformation always looks like collapse from outside. The caterpillar doesn't know it's becoming a butterfly. It only knows it's dissolving. Inside the chrysalis, its body literally liquefies. If you could ask it, it would say it's dying. It has no idea it's being reborn. You're in the chrysalis now. And yes, it feels like death. Every identity dissolving, every certainty melting. But this liquefaction, this is how nature remakes you. Jung watched this in patient after patient. Those who resisted, who tried to force themselves back, who fought the darkness, stayed stuck. But those who surrendered to the process, who trusted the darkness, had intelligence. They emerged transformed. Not healed as in back to normal. Transformed as in never the same and grateful for it. This is the promise. If you stop fighting and start understanding, you'll discover this collapse is the best thing that happened to you. Because on the other side, you're not just a recovered empath. You're a sovereign one. But to get there, we need to map the territory. We need to understand the stages you're moving through. That means going deeper. Stage 1. The collapse itself. Let me describe what happened to you. One day you just couldn't anymore. Maybe it was one more crisis, one more person needing you. Or maybe just a Tuesday when you realized you couldn't remember the last time you felt like yourself. The light that had always guided you just went out. Like someone flipped a switch. And in its place, nothing. Not sadness. Just absence. A void where your aliveness used to be. You tried to push through at first. Fake it till you make it. So you smiled and showed up. But it was like watching yourself from outside going through motions that meant nothing. The emotions you could always access, gone. the empathy that defined you, unreachable. Then came the fear. If you're not the empathetic one, who are you? If you can't feel what others feel, what's your purpose? Maybe you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize yourself. Sat with friends feeling like a stranger. Went through days like an actor in a life that wasn't yours. This is Negredo the Blackening. And Jung wants you to understand. This isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. Your ego has been operating under rules for years. Be helpful. Absorb pain. Put everyone first. Don't burden anyone. Be the light. These rules kept you loved, kept you needed. But they also kept you fragmented and disconnected from your authentic self. Your unconscious watched for years. Watched you give until there was nothing left. Watched you build identity entirely around others' needs. Watched you slowly disappear beneath expectations. And finally it said, no more. The collapse isn't failure of willpower. It's your psyche's emergency intervention, pulling all energy inward to focus on survival and regeneration. Think of a tree in winter. Does it fail when it drops its leaves? No. It's withdrawing energy to its roots to survive. Come spring, it doesn't just return, it grows, stronger than before. You're in winter. Your leaves have fallen. Your energy retreated to your roots. It feels like death because all you see is what's gone. But beneath the surface, something is happening. You're gathering strength for a spring you can't yet imagine. Stage 2. The dissolution of false identity. After the collapse comes something more disorienting. You stop knowing who you are. For most of your life, you've had an answer to, who am I? Maybe I'm the person people come to. I'm the empath. I'm the healer. I'm the strong friend. But now those identities feel hollow. You can't be the healer if you can't even heal yourself. So who are you? This is the dissolution of the persona. The social mask, the role you played, is falling apart. Without that mask, you feel naked, exposed, undefined. Our entire society is built on persona maintenance. Everyone has a role, an identity. Losing your persona feels like losing your place in the world. You might withdraw from social situations. Not from depression, but because you can't perform anymore. The thought of being the good listener when you're barely listening to yourself, exhausting. Being the positive friend when you're deep in darkness, impossible. So you pull back. And people notice. You've been distant, they say. And you can't explain that you're not distant, you're dissolving. That everything is not okay, but maybe for the first time you're becoming real. This is where the journey through Carl Jung, empath, and personal development becomes most challenging. The temptation is to rebuild, quickly grab any identity that will make you feel solid. Maybe I'm just an introvert. Maybe I need a career change. But Jung warns against premature reconstruction. This dissolution, as painful as it is sacred. It's the only time when you're not playing a role, not performing an identity. Just raw existence. Most people never experience this. They go from one persona to another, never meeting their naked self. But you're being forced into this meeting. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's also the doorway to genuine freedom. You might have strange dreams. Jung paid close attention because they reveal what's happening unconsciously. You might dream of losing things, death symbolic, not literal, being naked in public houses with unknown rooms or overwhelming water. These aren't random. They're your psyche communicating. The person you thought you were isn't who you actually are. Let them go so I can show you who you've always been. But letting go feels like annihilation, especially when people resist your transformation. Friends who preferred you as the helper get uncomfortable. Family who relied on you being strong get frustrated when you're weak. Jung called this collective pressure against individuation. Society doesn't want you to become yourself. It wants you predictable, useful, consistent. But your psyche wants you whole. And wholeness requires breaking collective expectations. This is profoundly lonely. You're losing old relationships while not yet having new ones. Losing your old self while not knowing your new self. You're in between worlds. But Jung discovered this loneliness is necessary. You can't hear your own voice while everyone else is talking. You can't discover your truth while performing others' expectations. The dissolution has to be complete. Everything that isn't truly you must fall away. That means a period where you feel like nothing. But formlessness is where creation happens. Before anything can be made, there must be void. You're in the void. Stay here. Because something is about to shift. Stage 3. The dark night and the turning point. There comes a moment where something changes internally, not externally. The situation might be the same. You might still feel empty, withdrawn. But internally, something shifts. It's the moment you stop fighting. Not giving up, that's resignation. This is surrender. You stop trying to force yourself back to normal and just allow. Allow the darkness. Allow the not knowing. Allow the dissolution to complete. Jung called this the turning point, the shift from ego resistance to ego cooperation with the unconscious. It changes everything. As long as you're fighting the collapse, you're at war with yourself. But when you surrender, when you accept what is, and the war ends. And in that peace, you feel something you haven't felt in months: relief. Acceptance doesn't mean defeat. It means alignment. When you stop fighting, your transformation, energy locked in resistance, becomes available for listening, understanding, allowing something new to emerge. That's when you hear it. A voice, not external, but internal. Quiet, steady, coming from deeper than conscious thoughts. Jung called this the voice of the self. And what does it say? You don't need to save anyone to have value. You only need to be present, not perfect. Your worth isn't measured by what you give. You are enough exactly as you are. When these emerge from your own depths, from the silence you've been sitting in, they don't just sound true, they feel true. In your body, in your bones. This is the shift from sentimental compassion to wise compassion. Sentimental compassion says, your pain is my pain. I must fix you to feel okay. It's compassion driven by merger, by inability to tolerate others' suffering without eliminating it. Wise compassion says, I see your pain. I witness your struggle. I trust your ability to move through it. It's compassion from wholeness, not woundedness. You can only develop wise compassion by going through what you're going through now, by experiencing the Savior identity's death, by discovering the world doesn't fall apart when you're not holding it together. Slowly, you notice changes. You say no without the usual guilt. You feel concern for someone without that drowning sensation. You went a whole day without checking on people, and the world didn't end. Small moments easy to miss, but significant. Your new self beginning to take shape. Not who you were before, not some idealized version, but something real, solid, authentically you. You're entering the albedo phase, the emergence of light after darkness. But different light, not bright, burning, unsustainable. This is steady, deep, unshakable. Stage 4. Early integration signs. Integration doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual knitting together of consciousness and unconscious ego and self, who you were and who you're becoming. But there are unmistakable signs. First, boundaries without guilt. Remember when setting boundaries felt like cutting off a limb, that guilt starts to lift. You say no, and yes, there's discomfort, but not the crushing guilt of before, just a feeling, one among many, not a verdict on your worth. You understand that preserving your energy isn't selfish, that your capacity has limits, that saying yes when you mean no helps no one. You're not living reactively anymore. You're pausing, checking in, asking, do I have capacity? Do I genuinely want to help? Or am I running the old program, second choosing solitude without loneliness? Being alone starts to feel restorative. You crave it, not because you hate people, but because you've discovered your energy is yours. Your inner world is rich. You enjoy your own company. Third, feeling others' emotions without drowning. You discover empathy and enmeshment aren't the same thing. Before, feeling someone's emotion meant becoming it. If they were sad, you were sad. No separation between their experience and yours. But now something changed. You can feel what someone's going through. The empathy is still there, but there's a membrane. You're aware this is their experience, not yours. You witness their pain without taking it on. This is differentiation. You're becoming separate in the healthiest sense, not walled off, but clearly defined. You know where you end and others begin. Paradoxically, this makes you a better helper. Because you're helping from overflow, from choice, from conscious compassion, not from depletion or compulsion. Fourth, dreams of integration. The death dreams, losing things dreams, overwhelming water. They're replaced by dreams of finding treasure, discovering new rooms, cleaning spaces, light, breaking through darkness, standing strong in storms, bridges, connecting places. Your psyche showing you integration is happening. The scattered parts are coming together. Unconscious and conscious are building bridges. Fifth, energy return, but different. You start feeling your energy return. Not the manic, unsustainable energy of before. This is steadier, deeper, more reliable, like the difference between a firework and a sun. The firework is brilliant, spectacular, gone in seconds. The sun is steady, constant, sustaining. You're becoming a sun. You can help someone without being depleted. Engage with difficult emotions without being overwhelmed. Show up without completely showing out. This is the rubido phase, the reddening when the gold of the true self shines through. Not gold-plated, just genuine, solid, real. Welcome to the most practical stage. You've gone through collapse, dissolution, the dark night, early integration. Now it's time to live this new way in the actual world with actual people and challenges. This is where theory becomes practice, where insight becomes embodied, where understanding becomes action. Jung called this individuation, becoming the individual you were always meant to be, rather than the collective's version of who you should be. Let's get clear on what boundaries actually are. Boundaries aren't walls, they're membranes. They allow things to pass through selectively. They let nourishment in and keep toxicity out. Think of your skin. It's a boundary but not a wall. It breathes. It absorbs sunlight. It releases sweat. But it also keeps bacteria out, prevents dehydration, protects organs. This is what healthy boundaries do for your psyche. Before the collapse, you probably had one of two problems. Either no boundaries, wide open, absorbing everything, or rigid walls built after being hurt. Sovereign boundaries are different. They're conscious, flexible, self-defined. You decide in each moment what you have capacity for, and you act accordingly without guilt. Someone calls in crisis. Old, you would have dropped everything, absorbed their anxiety. Wall building, you would have ignored the call and felt guilty. Sovereign, you check in first. Do I have capacity? If yes, you engage fully but with awareness. This is their experience. If no, you send a kind message. I can see you're going through something hard. I don't have bandwidth for a call right now, but I'm thinking of you. Notice the difference. You're not performing compassion. You're not faking capacity. You're being honest while maintaining connection. This is the art staying open-hearted while self-protective, being generous while boundaried, loving others while loving yourself. The tree metaphor is useful. A tree with deep roots can bend in strong winds without breaking. It's flexible but unshakable. Its roots go deep into its own nourishment. This is you now, rooted in yourself, connected to others, but never confusing connection with dependency. The second pillar is understanding that your energy is sacred currency. And like any currency, you need to be conscious of where it goes. Before the collapse, your energy leaked everywhere, into worry about people who didn't ask for your worry, into fixing problems that weren't yours to fix, into emotional labor for people who took it for granted, into relationships that were fundamentally unbalanced. Now you're becoming a conscious steward of your energy. You're asking questions like, where does my energy naturally go when I'm not paying attention? Who or what genuinely energizes me versus who or what depletes me? Am I giving from overflow or from emptiness? What do I need to do to return to myself when I've given too much? This isn't selfishness. It's sustainability. Because an empty well helps no one. A depleted empath serves no one. But an empath who knows how to maintain their own energetic fullness, that person can offer genuine nourishment to others. Jung understood that the psyche operates on energy principles. He called this psychic energy libido, not in the sexual sense, but in the sense of life force. And he observed that libido naturally flows where attention goes. For empaths, attention has been trained outward, to others' needs, others' feelings, others' crises. But during integration, you're retraining attention inward first. Not permanently, you're not becoming a narcissist, but as a foundation. Think of it like the airplane oxygen mask instruction. Put yours on first, then help others. Not because you don't care about others, but because you can't help anyone if you're unconscious. Practical energy consciousness looks like checking in with your body throughout the day. How am I feeling right now? What do I need? Noticing when you've taken on someone else's mood or anxiety and consciously releasing it, creating energetic rituals to mark transitions from work to home, from social to solitude, from absorbing to releasing, spending time alone without phones, screens, or inputs, just being with yourself, saying yes only to what genuinely lights you up and no to what feels like obligation. This is the journey through Carl Jung empath and personal development that most people never complete. Actually restructuring how you use your most precious resource, your life force. Here's where we get into the really deep work at the part of Jungian psychology that most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. The shadow is everything about yourself that you've deemed unacceptable and therefore repressed. For empaths, this usually includes selfishness, anger, the desire to say no, the part that wants to be taken care of, the part that's tired of helping, the part that judges others for being needy, the part that wants revenge when hurt. You've probably spent your whole life trying to be good, to be kind, to be understanding, to never be selfish, never be angry, never be anything that might make you less lovable. But Jung discovered something crucial. What we resist persists. What we reject in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes underground into the shadow where it operates unconsciously and often sabotages us. Remember during the collapse when you felt nothing that was shadow material breaking through? The part of you that's exhausted from caring, the part that resents being everyone's therapist, the part that wants to scream, "What about me?" These aren't bad parts, they're human parts, they're real parts. And integration requires embracing them, not banishing them. Jung said something provocative. I'd rather be whole than good. He meant that wholeness requires accepting all parts of yourself, the socially acceptable and the socially rejected, the light and the dark, the helper and the one who sometimes wants to be helped. Shadow integration for empaths means acknowledging that you have needs, and needs aren't weaknesses, allowing yourself to feel anger when boundaries are violated, accepting that you can't save everyone, and part of you is relieved about that, recognizing that sometimes you help people not from pure compassion, but from wanting to be needed. Admitting that you sometimes judge the very people you're helping. This feels scary at first, like acknowledging these parts will make you a bad person, but actually, acknowledging them makes you a real person. And real is always more trustworthy than performed perfection. When you integrate your shadow, something remarkable happens. You become more compassionate, not less, because you're no longer projecting your repressed qualities onto others. You're no longer self-righteous or superior. You understand that everyone has light and dark, strength and weakness, good intentions and selfish moments. You become human, gloriously, messily, authentically human. And that's far more healing to be around than someone pretending to be a saint. With boundaries in place, energy consciousness developing, and shadow being integrated, something shifts in your relationships. You stop performing. You stop being who people need you to be, and start being who you actually are. And yes, this means some relationships will change. Some might even end. Jung called this the natural consequence of individuation. When you stop living for the collective and start living for yourself, the collective gets uncomfortable. People who benefited from your people-pleasing don't like the boundaried version of you. People who enjoyed unconditional access to your energy resent that access being limited. This can be painful, but it's also clarifying. Because the relationships that survive your transformation, those are the real ones. Those are the people who love you, not just love what you do for them. Those are the connections based on mutual respect, not one-sided caretaking. And new relationships start to form too. You attract different people now, people who are also on a path of growth, people who respect boundaries, people who can receive and give in balance. Authentic relating means showing up as you are not as who you think you should be. Letting people see your complexity, not just your helpfulness. Being willing to disappoint others to stay true to yourself. Asking for what you need instead of waiting for people to guess, ending conversations when you're done. Instead of enduring them, sharing your struggles, not just listening to others. At first, this feels selfish. You might hear the old voice saying, "Who do you think you are putting yourself first?" But gradually, you recognize that voice isn't yours, it's the collective's. It's everyone who benefited from you being selfless. And you no longer answer to that voice. You answer to yourself. And yourself knows that mutual balanced relationships are the only sustainable ones. The only ones that actually nourish both people. The only ones where love flows freely rather than being drained from one person into another. Now here's the challenge. You're becoming whole. You're integrating shadow. You're setting boundaries. You're energy conscious. But you still live in a world that desperately needs empaths. How do you serve without sacrificing? How do you help without returning to old patterns? How do you be in the world, but not of it? As the saying goes, Jung's answer, conscious compassion. You don't stop caring. You don't stop helping. You don't become cold or closed off. You simply become conscious of when you're helping from wholeness versus helping from woundedness. Helping from woundedness looks like needing to be needed, rescuing instead of empowering, merging with others' pain, giving past your capacity, feeling responsible for outcomes you can't control. Helping from wholeness looks like wanting to serve, but not needing to be the savior. Supporting others' autonomy and capability. Witnessing pain without absorbing it. Giving from overflow. Stopping when empty, trusting others' journeys, even when painful. The difference is subtle but profound. One depletes you and keeps others dependent. The other sustains you and empowers others. You're learning to be present without being invasive, to care without carrying, to love without losing yourself, to help without hurting yourself. This is mastery. This is what it means to be a healed empath in a hurting world. Not someone who's shut down their sensitivity, but someone who's refined it into wisdom. And people will feel the difference. Your presence alone becomes healing, not because you're doing anything, but because you're being something. You're being whole, and wholeness is contagious. Just as woundedness spreads, so does health. Just as anxiety is contagious, so is peace. By healing yourself, by becoming whole, by integrating your shadow and living from yourself, you're not abandoning the world. You're offering it the greatest gift and the example of what's possible. Here's what nobody tells you. Some people will hate your healing. They'll say you've changed, not as a compliment. That you're not yourself anymore, that you've become selfish, that they miss the old you. What they really mean: you're not functioning in the role I assigned you. You're not giving me what I got used to taking. This resistance comes from everywhere. Family who benefited from you being the caretaker. Friends who relied on you being their therapist. Partners who liked you being understanding of their unavailability. Colleagues who dumped work on you. When you set boundaries, they'll test them. When you say no, they'll guilt you. When you prioritize yourself, they'll accuse you of selfishness. This is where transformation gets real. Because it's easy to set boundaries with strangers. Harder with people you love, people whose approval you've always sought. But Jung would tell you, their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their adjustment to your boundaries is their work, not yours. The people who truly love you will adjust. They might be surprised, even hurt. But if they genuinely care, they'll see you're healthier now. They'll choose connection over control. The people who can't adjust reveal their relationship with you was transactional. That they valued what you gave them more than who you are. You're not here to be who others need. You're here to become who you actually are. And anyone who can't celebrate that doesn't deserve space in your life. Stand firm. Trust your boundaries. Don't explain or justify your transformation. Just live it. Consistently, lovingly, unapologetically. The right people will stay. The wrong people will leave. And either way, you'll be whole. So here you are. You've descended into darkness and emerged. You've dissolved the false self and discovered the real one. You've integrated shadow-established boundaries, learned to live consciously. You've navigated resistance and stayed true to transformation. You're not who you were before the collapse. Thank God for that. Because who you were couldn't last. That version was beautiful but unsustainable. Generous but self-destructive. Open-hearted but boundaryless. Loving but depleting. That version had to die. And something needed to be born in their place. You're a sovereign empath. Someone who feels deeply but isn't drowned by feeling. Someone who cares profoundly but doesn't carry what isn't theirs. Someone who helps powerfully but doesn't need to save. Your sensitivity isn't gone. It's refined. Like raw ore through fire emerging as gold. You feel everything you felt before, but now you have capacity to hold it, to observe it, to choose what to do with it. You're not numb-closed, protected by walls, or hardened by pain. You're actually more open than before, but from strength, not vulnerability. From fullness, not emptiness. From choice, not compulsion. Jung called this psychological rebirth the moment when the self, having gone through death and transformation, emerges as something unprecedented. Not the ego reformed, not the persona rebuilt, but the self finally embodied. You recognize this in subtle ways: serenity without suppression. You're calm because you can hold difficult emotions. You have capacity now, space, You're no longer flooded by every feeling. Intuition without exhaustion. Remember when empathy drained you? Now you can tune into energy, into undercurrents, into unspoken truths, and it doesn't cost you. It flows through you like information, not invasion. Love without attachment. You care about people. You want good things for them, but you're not attached to outcomes. You're not trying to control their journey. You trust everyone is where they need to be. Light that doesn't fear darkness. You're no longer afraid of your darkness or others. You don't need to fix every shadow, transmute every pain. You understand darkness is part of wholeness. That light and shadow dance together. Jung writes, "I have found that in the death of the ego, the soul discovers an inexhaustible spring, and from the ashes, a new God arises. That new God is you, not ego you performing and striving, but self you grounded and authentic and free. Let's talk about what makes you different, because your sensitivity is genuine power now. Society calls empaths too sensitive, like it's a weakness. But you know better. You feel undercurrents others miss. You see what's unspoken. You sense what wants to emerge. You read energy like others read books. This isn't a flaw. It's a gift. It always was. The problem was never the sensitivity. It was the lack of boundaries, the lack of consciousness, the lack of integration that made it overwhelming. But now your sensitivity is refined. A tool you wield consciously, not a curse you suffer unconsciously. You walk into a room and sense the emotional climate. But you don't absorb it. You observe it. You understand what's happening without becoming it. Someone tells their story and you feel into their experience. But you don't lose yourself. You witness their journey without taking it on. You sense when something is off, and you trust that sense. You don't override it with logic. Your intuition is valid, and you honor it. This is what the study of Carl Jung, empath, and personal development reveals. Sensitivity isn't the problem. Lack of self is. And now that you've found yourself, your sensitivity becomes what it was always meant to be, a superpower. You're what Jung called a wounded healer, someone who's been through darkness and emerged transformed. And now your presence alone is medicine. Not because you're doing anything, but because you embody transformation. People feel this. They sense it. You're grounded in a way they're not. You're present in a way that's rare. You hold space not from performance, but from genuine capacity. You've become what you needed when you were collapsing. And that's the gift you now offer the world. But here's what I need you to understand. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. Individuation, Jung said, is lifelong. You don't arrive at wholeness and stay there forever. You spiral through deeper and deeper levels of it. Each cycle brings new shadow material to integrate new false identities, to release new capacities to develop. You might go through this process again. Differently, but again. Because growth isn't linear. It's spiral. Each time you circle back through collapse and rebirth, you go deeper. You discover new layers. You become more fully yourself. But here's the difference. You're not afraid of it anymore. You know the territory. You trust the process. You understand that darkness isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. That collapse isn't failure, it's invitation. That death is always followed by rebirth. You've learned what Jung spent his life teaching. The soul knows what it's doing. The psyche has intelligence. The unconscious is always moving toward wholeness. Your job isn't to control the journey. Your job is to surrender to it, learn from it, and allow yourself to be transformed by it. And along the way, you're not alone. There's a community of people on this path. People who've gone through their own collapse and rebirth. People who understand that the deepest healing happens in the darkest places. People who recognize each other by the light, they carry not the bright, burning, unsustainable light of before, but the steady, deep, unshakable light of integrated wholeness. You're part of this community now. You're one of us, the ones who descended and returned, the ones who died and were reborn, the ones who faced their shadow and emerged whole. Your presence in the world matters, not because you're perfect, not because you have all the answers, but because you're real, because you're whole, because you've been through the fire and emerged as gold. Jung once wrote, "Those who have faced their own darkness no longer fear the world. They become the world." This is what you've done. You faced your darkness. You sat in the collapse. You allowed the false self to dissolve. You integrated shadow. You established sovereignty. You became whole. And now you don't fear the world's darkness because you've been to the depths and returned. You don't fear others' pain because you've held your own. You don't fear collapse because you know it's just transformation wearing a mask. You've become what Jung called an individuated being, someone who's done the work of becoming themselves. Not the self society wanted, not the self your family expected, not the self your trauma created, but your actual self, the one you were always meant to be. After collapse, you no longer seek healing because life itself has become the healing. Every moment is an opportunity for integration. Every challenge is an invitation to deeper wholeness. Every relationship is a mirror showing you what still needs to be loved and accepted in yourself. You've stepped out of the emotional vortex and become luminous, still, deep, present, living what Nietzsche called amor fati, loving everything that happens, the wound and the healing, the collapse and the rebirth, the darkness and the light. Because you understand now what Jung spent his life discovering. They're not opposites. They're partners. They're two faces of the same wholeness. And you contain both. You are both. You honor both. So here we are at the end of this journey together. Though really, it's not an ending. It's a beginning. Your beginning. True healing isn't going back to how things were. It's understanding that you never want to go back. It's not banishing darkness. It's recognizing that light and shadow breathe within a single soul, your soul. You haven't just survived collapse. You've been transformed by it, remade by it, liberated by it. You're not the same person who entered the darkness. You're not meant to be. That person completed their mission. They brought you as far as they could. And then they stepped aside so someone more authentic, more whole, more you could emerge. Welcome home to yourself. You are no longer a faint lamp hoping not to burn out. You're an inner sun, steady and sustainable and radiant. Not because you're trying to be, but because you've done the work, because you've faced your depths, because you've chosen wholeness over performance, truth over approval, self over persona. The collapse didn't break you. It broke you open. And what emerged from that breaking is more beautiful, more powerful, more real than anything you've ever been. After passing through the ashes, you no longer ask, "Who hurt me?" You whisper, "This has awakened me." This is the gift of the journey. This is the promise kept. This is beyond the collapse, the place where empaths truly heal, not by becoming less sensitive, but by becoming more whole, not by shutting down, but by opening up from a foundation of sovereignty, not by returning to who you were, but by becoming who you've always been, beneath the roles, the expectations, the conditioning. You are whole. You are sovereign. You are finally, gloriously, impossibly free. And the world needs who you've become. If this journey resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Where are you in this process? Are you in the collapse right now, feeling like you're dying? Are you in the dissolution, not knowing who you are? Are you in the integration phase, learning to set boundaries without guilt? Share your experience in the comments. Your story matters. Your transformation matters. And you're not alone in this. If you found value in exploring Jung's depth psychology and how it applies to the empathic journey, subscribe to this channel. There's so much more to explore: shadow work, dream interpretation, active imagination, and the ongoing process of individuation. Your collapse was never your ending. It was your invitation. And on the other side of accepting that invitation is a version of you that's more authentic, more powerful, and more at peace than you ever imagined possible. Welcome to the other side. Welcome home to yourself. The journey continues.